Hey, Chad. Good to see you, man. Thank you for joining in on this conversation today. Yeah, what we want to talk about is the association world, what's going on in tech today in that world, what's happening in the market, what should providers of technology that are speaking to associations every day, what kind of things do they need to know and think about? And then in your opinion, what's the future of what's going to be happening here in tech, of course, around AI or anything integrations or just whatever it might be in the market that you've seen in your background. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today. But before we start, you want to go ahead and just say a little bit about yourself and sort of frame that up for us?
Yes, thank you so much, Chris, for having me. It's always a pleasure spending time with you. So my background is I've been within the association space for about 20 or so years. I'll just cut it off at that point. Working with them on actually it's kind of an interesting background. I've had majority of my time obviously on the tech side of things, but I've worked on both spectrums of the equation, if you will. One actually on the growth side, working with folks as a business partner and a software provider to help them with, growing and educating the market about the products or services that they have. But also on the other side, I've been very blessed and fortunate to work with association executives who are going through the process of trying to make decisions. And that's through my company called Smart Thoughts. And so mostly as it relates to tech, as I mentioned, but I've also got into the areas of services as it relates to doing those type of things that we talk about when we refer to them as implementation. So with that being said, I have a great deal of experience on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, you do. And I can vouch for that as well. We've been professional friends for quite a while. So it's exciting
Absolutely.
to talk about some of the things we talk about, in our own conversations, kind of bring them to light here and share it with the community. Because that's what this is really about, is giving those that serve the community of associations some insights into what's going on. So with that in mind, sort of just talk about what's your opinion, and you've had some unique experiences recently in the market of the tech association market today. I mean, you've been to the ASAE events, you've talked to associations selling them on new technology. So just talk through a little bit about what your feeling is about where things sit right now from the tech vendor side and how associations feel about where things are at.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, as I mentioned, have most of association executives and staff that work there and members understand the terminology of AMS or association management software. And that's, one of my main things over the course of the current recent memory is actually just trying to figure out just that question, mostly as it relates to kind of what AI is doing to change the perspective of tech as it relates to what they need, if you will, the market. And so when I think about the opinion or the state of the tech and the association market today, I think we're kind of at somewhat of another inflection point that I I would say probably one of the biggest ones that I have seen in my time. And we've gone through a lot of tech changes in the last 20 years. When e-commerce came in, we all were wanting to do what the banks were doing, such as the self-service. We got into mobility. We got into, this whole idea of social and community. Everything that we want to do on our phone, we want to be able to do with the products and services that we get. And so I think with AI, it's really changed the game a lot. And so in recent months, what I did is actually I sat down and I really started to figure out exactly what it is that these systems that we call AMSs are doing in that particular area. So I think that when we look at the reality as it relates to AMSs, I put together a pretty lengthy report. As I was going through, I didn't really have I shared it with Chris, the other day, is that I didn't really have the thought that, oh, I would put together a report, or anything of that nature. It was more or less my own due diligence because as a steward
Mhm.
of time and information, if you will, for the people that hire me, I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to answer the question about who's really doing what and what quality of depth they have. And so I looked at the 130 plus AMS vendors that were out in the marketplace and, and it's constantly growing too. And I really wanted to see what they were doing as it relates to AI. And AI, like all acronyms, means a lot of different things to different people. When I am actually go in and I start talking with association executives, oftentimes it's unpacking those acronyms that we talk about all the time. and
Mm.
figuring out exactly what it means to them, because everybody's got a unique perspective on what that is, because it's based on their mission, vision, and goals, right? And so when we talk about the vendors, if you will, that I looked at, I went one by one. And I know that sounds time consuming. Yes, it was, but it was fun because I'm kind of a geek at this stuff. I really kind
Yeah.
of really truly, wanted to learn what they were doing. And I think there's a big gap. And so what's really keeping me up at night is, this technology gap that I see, if you will, in AI in the AMS community. And I don't think that when I talk about from an association perspective, they're going to be thinking about or should be asking, like, is this AMS better than this one? They should be asking something like, well, why can't this do what I wanted to do that AI is allowing me to do today? Because in the
Mm.
next 5 to 7 years, I think that's going to be the key, is that it's not about comparing to other AMSs as much as like, well, how can AI be infused into this experience that I have to do the things that I need to do to reach my mission, vision, and goals, to reach the service revenues that I need as an organization and the services that I need to give to my members.
Mhm.
And so I
Mm.
think that when I look at associations in general, a lot of them are really just starting from scratch, and that's not going to be good enough. Meaning they really need to get their head around what they need to do fast, and then the vendors, too, are behind, and they need to get their act together very quickly. And that's kind of a summary of what I found. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of information, so to speak, in some degrees, but a lot of people, if you talk to the vendors or you talk to association executives, they're just talking about the consumer based products that are out there. They're just talking about, oh, well,
Mhm.
we use Chat GPT, or we use, Gemini, or something that's on the consumer side, which is fine. But at the end of the day, that's not going to be good enough in the next 18 and plus 18
Mhm.
months and beyond. It's going to be about how can AI do what it really is able to do today, which is research, reason, and react, and then act upon that data that they have and get faster, smarter about what it is they're trying to solve, whether that's membership, renewals they're trying to improve, or understanding the members better and what they need to do. These are all things that
Mhm.
the association tools that we are being, or what we're using, is going to have to do, specifically the AMS. And I think candidly, that the state of tech and association it's not bad because the vendors aren't trying or thinking about it. It's basically like, I think that it's because things are going so quickly. And you probably heard this, Chris, now, Moore's law, right? The principle that the speed and capability of computers can be expected to double every 2 years. You've likely heard
Mhm.
that.
Sure.
The result of that, it's usually dependent on the transistors and their microchips and what they contain and how fast things happen. Now it's like, that's really longer applicable with
No.
AI in the mix, because it can happen in every 6 months. A fast
Yep.
change, new capability is actually released that we didn't
Yep.
even have in our minds that we could do. And I think that honestly, as we think about, you know, the state of association tech and association work, if you will, it's
Mhm.
really at an inflection point that both sides of the equation has to get their act together really, really quick and start, by, just walking, jogging and running, the old adage of that, but basically they got to get their head around this. It's not going away. And successfully, you know, today, most associations aren't using, and there might be a legitimate argument for some of those people to continue not to do it. But the
Yeah.
truth of the matter is,
Yeah.
they need to start thinking about it, because it's going to improve, their world, if you will, and the capabilities that they have to provide
Yeah.
services. So I think it's safe to say that the state of the market, that most associations, their adoption rate is low. I think the last I looked at, there's like a study from Association Trends, I think it was, that basically said that right now about 18%, and that coincides with kind of the numbers that I hear about on the commercial side, but it tells 18% adoption, if you will. So AI capabilities are and should be, for some people, a differentiating factor when they look at tech.
Mhm.
Um, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you're looking at still to this date. But I think approximately 3 years before, these things, these AI is infused into it, and we have even new systems that come about that are AI native. And you see
Right.
them on the for-profit side, commercial tech, they'll be here too.
Mhm.
They'll make traditional AMS platforms quickly get either up to speed or obsolete. And I don't think that that's hyperbole, so to speak,
Yeah.
because the truth is that when you look at, what's happening in somewhat of an akin cousin area like CRM or ERP, you can see that they've done it. They've responded, they've reacted, they've put it into the product. And then there's other ones, as I mentioned just a minute ago, that have built it from the ground up with this is what we're going to solve. We're going to build
Mhm.
in AI agents into the framework so that you can connect with whatever you want to, whatever data system, and you can get your jobs done. And so that's happening today in the CRM space. It's happening in the ERP space. It's happening in other systems that are out there. That is what's going to transpire moving forward.
Yeah, super insightful. So if I'm a AMS vendor or an LMS vendor or some tech vendor trying to move into this space and move into this AI forward idea, here's the question, I guess, because there are already AI companies, AI specific companies coming into the association market saying, I will put a layer of AI over your data, not specifically what data, it could be any data from any system. And we'll use AI to report on it. We'll use AI to track sentiment, whatever it might be for you. So, should we be looking at partnering with people that do that? Should
It's a
associate?
great question. And let
Yeah,
me
go
dig
ahead.
into that because it comes top of mind when I thought about this. It's like one of the things when I was evaluating readiness or capabilities is looked at what a product's AMS products approach to AI was. First, did they even have a strategy?
Yeah.
That was probably, Chris, the most disheartening thing is that a lot of them didn't even mention, don't talk about, or entertain it. And I want to separate a couple of things here, and it's kind of terminology that may not resonate with everybody, but I often and continue to refer to those that are built on top systems, those ones that are built on a platform like Microsoft, NetSuite, or Salesforce, those type of AMS systems that have leveraged a platform, right? And then you have proprietary systems, those that are built from the ground up, on maybe likely Microsoft, but it's their own, secret sauce from the ground up. There is no platform that they're dependent on. There's no licensing that they're tied to, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. And so from the get-go, those platform folks that I looked at, they already inherited a lot of, you know, value in itself from R&D through the platforms. That's just a given. And so when I started looking at I'm most concerned about what I refer to, Chris, is proprietary systems.
Yeah.
Those that are built from the ground up because of a lot of factors, which we'll get into probably in a bit here. But basically, I think the biggest opportunity, if you're going back to your question, is what do you think the biggest opportunity for the tech vendors is right now? It
Yeah.
it's really about building. It's not about AI features, so to speak. I want to be very honest with you because when I was looking at the systems, it's about sharing with them what are your true capabilities and being a trusted partner to them to
Yeah.
help them bridge that gap between aspirations and capacity, what they really can do. Because I think oftentimes, and when I went through early on, again, I've been doing software selection projects and working on tech decisions for a long time. And it's not uncommon for me to talk to, some association executives that have like what I always call it a one voter mindset, voter issue mindset.
Mm.
So they'll come in and say, I've got to have, integrated into WordPress or something of that nature, right?
Hmm.
Or I've got to have this. And they get so fixated on that. And I want to caution everybody is that you shouldn't get fixated on AI, only AI, like I have here. My job is to understand everything because I'm
Yeah.
a good tutor with educating my, clients and the community.
Right.
Having said that is if I'm a vendor and I'm thinking as a vendor perspective, it's really thinking about doing what you can control like everything else, which is first and foremost, be honest about your capabilities. Cause I've seen a lot of fluff and a lot of things that just aren't true. The proof's in the pudding, so to speak. Right. And so
Mhm.
the honest is that if I'm then the thing that I would do is I'd just be honest and I'd start thinking about what I'm going to do. And then I'd come to the realization of how I'm going to approach this problem that we have. Because everybody, proprietary and platform systems, are going to continue to have to build on this idea of what AI means and unpack
Yeah.
it. So I'll give a couple of examples. And it goes to what you just alluded to, a kind of, set up, if you will, was how do you do this? Well, the partnership model is very important. I believe that in my world that I've always, in my success, and perhaps Chris, you too, is your success as a vendor or is partners. Honestly, you have a lot of opportunity with partnering with people to get to where you need to go because they may do different things or they may be focused. And just like individuals, companies, associations, et cetera, you can't be all things to everybody. You have to focus in on what you can do and you can't do everything. And so that's being said is that I think that a lot of these proprietary vendors are going to have to take a blueprint of the partnership side. And a couple of examples come to mind where they've done that, like IMAS. IMAS has done where they're going through is they have a roadmap, an AI roadmap, but they're not quite ready to do it themselves. So they've partnered with a firm, if you will, to build that out. I think it's Data Scout is the thing
Right.
that they've created, and it's Bursting Silver is the organization, and they basically built out, a component, if you will, for their members or their clients, I should say, that for their members to be able to use it as well as the staff to use that platform and leverage the data with inside of IMAS. The other thing from a partnership model, if I take top to vendors, I would say that, hey, you got to get your act together with being able to connect. And so Zapier is a good alternative. You can connect to hundreds of AI tools and AI functionality that you can't get if you can connect to Zapier. So if you're a association executive, you got your mindset on AI and you're a vendor, you need to be in concert. You need to be cohesively thinking about this together in a sense of collaboration and say, hey, well, what I can do is help you understand that I have the integration, I have the API, the openness to connect to, Zapier or Make or whoever that's out there that you choose. So you can get access to some of these tools that you can't leverage. And I think that another vendor, there's some other ones that are going beyond that. Like when I was looking at the report just recently and kind of getting my head back around some of the things that came to light was that, there's like Ready membership is not a real well-known product, if you will, in our community just yet, but it's been around for several years, mostly in the UK and whatnot, but they're doing great. They have a wonderful they have a not a little tool. It's a pretty nice solution called Ready Intelligence, which offers really a knowledge management tool that exceeds many of the capabilities that you can get out of the AMSs today. And the cool thing about it is if you're so inclined, you could actually, as an AMS vendor or other system, partner with them to be able to do things like predictability or to be,
Yes.
looking at, leveraging data and having the system be able to give you answers in a conversational way to get the insights out that you need, which is the key, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's the partnership model. I think the data support, if you will, is that the reality is the proprietary systems are likely going to have to really quickly think about who they're going to partner with. And then the reality of building it and being everything and having it all is just not feasible. And so I think that's really going to be important. And if I'm in their shoes, Chris, if I'm a CEO of a software AMS vendor or any other technology today, I'm going to make sure that my system not only has an API, because that's actually passe now. It should be built on what we call model context protocol support, which basically was released in, I think, November 24 by Anthropic, which basically allows any system, if you will, to connect to best of breed AI tools and data sources. And so that in of itself, if you can figure that out, and I've talked to quite a few AMS vendors, it's not as easy as it sounds, and I don't want to lessen that degree of difficulty, but you have to get there by connecting and then AI, the tools, if you will, the AI agents can come forth afterwards, and you can leverage a lot of things if you have that ability. So MCP support is a real critical thing. And then you can kind of look at, hey, what wins do we want to make or take that we can build and sell ourselves. Like, for example, Impexium. Impexium came out with this something, I guess, in 24 called iTalk, which is a conversational interface they launched. It lets users navigate the AMS using natural language. It's a pretty cool feature. And it's, it's something they decided, hey, we're going to tackle this,
Yeah.
Growth Zone, going back to the partner side, I failed to mention this. They partnered with Raza, to come up with newsletters and AI newsletters and integration into that. And it's very much more than just the standard integration that other AMS systems have. So I think that invariably there's a couple paths that I mentioned. Then there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, I don't really want to have third parties. So you're going to have to be, as a proprietary vendor, be looking at the fact that you're going to be really going head to head with these platform players. So Salesforce, Microsoft, NetSuite, those ones that have, immediate R&D of billions of dollars, that have Copilot, Einstein, and Power Platform AI, et cetera, et cetera. If, they're going to be, if you're trying to keep up with them, it's going to be a struggle, but you're going to have a strategy of how you're going to get there. And I think for a lot of the proprietary people, the reality is going to be that they're going to have to partner just to get you where you need to go now. And then over the next 3 to 5 years, come up with the people, the resources, if you will, and a dedicated, amount of money to keep up to a degree with some of the core things that, association may want to do. But I think that there's a path there, right? And I think that you have to, as a vendor, you have to be transparent,
Well, I want to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm hearing two things that jump out from what you're saying right now. One is what you're just about to go into, transparency, and this idea of partnership. And I kind of see those going together in a way. So if I'm a tech company right now serving associations, give me 3 ways I can be transparent and should be transparent with my clients. And does that transparency include who my partners are using MCP or whatever else it might be?
Absolutely. So I think that most associations are going to say, when they're talking to a proprietary, AMS or tech vendor that's providing tools for the association space, whether you're LMS or marketing automation platform or whatever, I'm just using AMS as a general.
Right.
But basically they need to define, I have a clear AI roadmap with specific dates in it. These are the things that we're going to do. If you have already an existing AI component, then you have to have full documentation, if you will, and or your partnership strategy or partnership communicated. That's transparency.
Okay.
You need to have also, if the case is like, I saw, can't think of the name, please forgive me, Chris, but it's a mobile something or another. I can't remember. They're partnering with Ready membership, but it's blatant. It's right out there in front, and they have customer references so that are using the AI features in production. So transparency means, customer references that you can cite and or not, right? You have to be honest. You have to give them an honest assessment of where you're strong and where you rely on partners. And that has to be communicated up front. And you, as a association executive, needs to decide, is that good enough? Are you okay with that methodology, that approach to things, which most of them are going to have to be. And that goes back to what I always say is, oftentimes in relationships and in business, if you will, expectations that are unrealistic are, a downside, right? A downside of, of getting what you need, or the expectations are too high and you can't get what you need. And I think that honest assessment of where you're at as a vendor, where you're strong, where you rely on partners is going to be absolutely, a must have, if you will. And so I don't think that the vendors that win on this, Chris, are those that are going to have the most AI features. It'll be those that, in essence, help associations get to the idea of what AI ready is, an understanding of that. Even if the end vendor doesn't really isn't there yet. But I think that transparency is going to have to be critical. You could probably, and you could go back to your book, selling unique. The truth is in the association space, you don't have a lot of opportunities to be, misleading, if you will.
Mm,
Yeah, it doesn't happen. You shouldn't do that on either thing, but you see it more on the other side of the, commercial software tech, unfortunately. But the truth is that you got to be very open, transparent as a vendor, and you got to help them with understanding what really truly AI is today. So getting AI ready mentally, educating them on that, being a leader, a thought leader, and setting the tone of what's realistic is going to be
mhm,
most critical as you go through a sales cycle with an audience. Now, again, Chris, I want to be very clear here is that I don't think AI should be the underlying or underpinning one
yeah,
issue, thing, but
yes,
it is going to continue to be more and more of a prevailing, indicator of relevancy for
mhm,
vendors. So if you're talking to somebody that has no answer to what they're doing or how they're approaching it, I would say walk away if you
mhm,
are a mid-size or larger association, and even micro to small, you,
yeah,
you should be apprehensive because even today, it's more common for people to move away from AMSs than ever before, in terms of,
yes,
the likelihood or the length of time you keep something as it was, a decade ago or more.
yep,
And so I'm just saying, if you sign an agreement today, it's 3 years. By the end of that term, and that AI vendor that you signed with doesn't have anything going, you're done. You're moving on. That vendor is probably
yeah,
going to be in maintenance mode, at
mhm.
best, and on life support.
So I'm with you. And this just kind of came into my head because a question we used to get back when I did websites was how long should this website be good for? How long can I use this WordPress CMS before it becomes outdated? And now we're looking at technologies. I mean, Anthropic, Gemini, ChatGPT, they all this week literally released their upgrades, so to speak, and they're
Yeah,
incredible advancements, massive advancements. So when you start plugging in AI to the tech equation, what's a tech vendor to say if someone were to say, how long is this good for? Or are you using, it kind of goes back to transparency in a way, but what we're talking about is building comfort and trust in our companies. And so I think maybe you agree that as a tech company, you don't want to seem like there isn't something you can do. And we know that, right? Sure, we can do that. I'll check the box. But what's a tech company to do right now? I mean, is this good for a year? Did they promise advancements or free upgrades? Or, I mean, what? It's kind of a conundrum for tech companies, it seems like.
it is. And it goes back to that Moore's Law principle. And like you just mentioned, several different releases that are just on the ones that a lot of people know the name of. But even that, there's so many other ones that are coming out
Yeah.
in different industries. For example, my wife's a interior designer, worked architecture, and there was an AI company that just came out that is taking CAD drawings and making them into, a three-dimensional, lifelike renditions with AI,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
CAD is a very cumbersome, difficult product for a lot of people. And so that in of itself is going to change the game, if you will. So if you go back into the world of, us in terms of what to expect in terms of the viability,
Yeah.
it goes back to most people that I have worked with oftentimes look at a 3 to 5 year window of working with a big
Right.
enterprise system, right? And so you end up signing a 3 year agreement and you lock it in, and then you don't have increases in price, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of value to that. But I would say that the key, it may not be that you can actually, you're gonna have to go in with trust that that product roadmap that they've documented and shared with you is going to come true and come to fruition. And that's going to take a lot, of, so you also need to kind of probably start considering the idea of how you deal with the contracts at each
Yeah.
term, right? And how you position that is like, if they do not, adhere to giving these, showing progress or whatever, there's got to be some, considerations. I don't know exactly the answer to that question, but I would say that I
Yeah.
don't think you need to move away or depart your idea of this isn't something that should be flippant and you just by turning the light off, you're gone to the next one. I think
Yep.
you need to have a commitment, but you need to have comfort in as a sales process. You need to build in more of that track record of delivering
Yes.
through other courses of things that you've done to support what you're saying. Because you can say to your blue in the face that you're great, but it's the track record that you can go back to and look at. But as we know in the investment world, history is no prediction of the
Yes.
future,
Right.
right?
Right.
But it is what we have, and from data
What we have.
collection point, that's kind of what you have to go off of. But it's all good questions, and I think it's really something that when you look at, get down to the decision criteria of 1A versus B option, you kind of have to look at that as another variable or just a priority point that you put a higher degree of on that product roadmap. Because as technology's changed so quickly, and probably, honestly, for everybody likely that I want to talk to, this is everybody's dealing with the same thing, but this is kind of the most, dramatic, traumatic, thing that
Yeah.
people
Yes.
are having to face because we've never been through something like this and it's going to change the world, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's been things that have enhanced the ability to do certain things. But when you talk about digital workers and you truly start talking about agentic AI, when, tasks that were once done by humans can now be done by agents, it's going to be, this is a far reaching,
Yeah.
thing that has to be addressed. So I think the truth is that you got to be, as we talked about, it's really, really critical to be, there's four things that they have
It's
to
like
do. They have to have the vendor you talk to, whether that's an LMS or, marketing automation, CMS, whatever, they have to have a clear AI roadmap with specific dates of what they're going to do.
yeah.
They need to have documentation of their partnership strategy if they don't intend to build or don't have the resources. And they have to be transparent and frank about that, right? And if they do have something in the works or they've already built, they need to give you references for those features that are in production, to validate, what they're saying. So to test that, if you will. And truth is that the executives down to the actual salespeople and marketing need to be honest, provide honest assessment of where you're strong and where you're relying on partners. I think they need to do those things, and in order to be able to show transparency, it does give as a vendor the ability to get away from being a salesperson to an advisor. I think that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
And you say this in your book very well, the whole idea of, it's not a transactional thing. It's a long-term commitment to a partner that you're going to keep forever. And you're not looking at this as a one and done scenario. So those honest assessments that are communicated from the top down to the execution by the front facing BDRs need to be honest about what's going on. Expectations are key. And most of the time when I've dealt with, people are wanting to leave or whatever, it comes down to that a lot of people don't even know, what it is that the vendors can do. And they have unrealistic expectations that are not fixated on reality and oftentimes seeded by either a peer or, maybe some information that was exaggerated.
Yeah. If you were, well, let me ask you this question. How important do you think education is, and what obligation does a tech vendor have to educate versus what the association, who is the future client, has to educate themselves on? How do they meet in the middle? Who's on the hook for what?
So honestly, I've always felt as a person on the side of helping people buy or procure software, as a team member of buying party or committee on the other, and even on the other side, that we as a sales person, marketing person should be educating. That is our chief role, is to educate and honestly tell that you can or can't do something, or, basically, because nobody gets into a relationship, whether it's business or personal, when you aren't up front with it, because you're going to you're going to set yourself up for failure. So I think that it's the job of the vendor to educate. As a vendor too, you also got to be there to not just try to be friends with them, but to challenge them sometimes when they don't think the way that they probably should about a certain idea that based on history will dictate a different response or answer that is truly verifiable. So you need to, so you got to educate, you got to teach, and then you got to basically challenge them, and then, help them along the path of getting to the place where they need to be. I've come up with this, Chris, you'll be the first to this idea of the cognitive core, if you will, that kind of falls in line with this idea. And I've been saying this for quite some time. It's that when we talk about AI, or we talk about in general, just technology, I think that it's important that you educate yourself on what is true and realistic, right? Educate, like for AI, we'll just take AI. You get yourself educated as an individual about, things, and you get educated not by just reading, but actually doing. So get out there and play with some of the consumer-based AI tools. Take a leap, try to build something, with AI agents. If you are so inclined to do so, you're not going to break anything. Oftentimes you're just going to get, more educated about what it is that you're getting into. I mean, have a dialogue and a entertainment, session with AI about learning AI. That's fun. So basically get yourself in line with and educate yourself. And then you move into what the charter is, i.e. the goals, the governance, if you will, of the organization. And you get alignment amongst them. And as a vendor, you've got to understand what that mission, that charter is of that organization, not just with AI, but other things, right? And then you got to figure out, okay, well, now that I've educated myself, I educated the organization, we're all in line with whatever, how do we move forward? And most people are going to say that you got to get your content in check, meaning your data. Your data has to be, quality, accessible, clean, et cetera, or AI is going to poop out, hallucinations. It used to be garbage in, garbage out, right, Chris? It still is. That's still true. But now it's garbage in, hallucinations out, because AI, unfortunately, at this point, if you talk and you look at a lot of AI models, they're not there to challenge you. And that goes back to the vendor side, Chris, is that you can go to AI to get answers, but the truth is that experience, that expertise that you as a vendor have should be, challenged by some of the things that they might be getting, because AI too needs to be put in its place sometimes, because it may not be framing, and it does the easy, just like all of us do. Sometimes the easy, answer, if you will, is what logically might flow, and it won't read. So if you check it, just like a vendor should when you're going through a sales process, for example, to kind of check their, their thought process, to get the opportunity to do that is probably what you want. But the truth is that you got to challenge, AI, but you got to get the content right, and then you figure out the tools. Okay, is it the right LMS? Is it the right CMS? Is it the right accounting management system? Blah, blah, blah. So I think it's the core, it's the cognitive core. So it's basically your competency, your charter, the content that you have, the data, if you will, the resources that you have, and then basically the execution on the capabilities with the tools that are out there. And I think as a vendor, probably one of a good threat is basically just that, is that if you're not doing those things, you have been doing it, it's going to get worse and worse, because, most of the people can go get answers, but it may not be the right answers about your product or service that you're providing.
Yeah.
And that usually is going to come through AI, but also their peers that are probably getting at AI too. So as a coach and advocate or whatever, that's out there in the marketplace, needs to make sure that, you're challenging, you're tailoring, and you're teaching, if you will, and educating on the truth, because we all have data, but that doesn't mean that we're making good decisions.
That's great. A great soundbite right there, man. And I like the core. I think a good formula goes a long way. And I like the way you sort of walked through that. I hope you're going to be publishing that in some form or fashion here.
I am. I've been saying it a long time. I just never came up with anything to wrap it around in terms of a acronym that we all love.
Relevant, super relevant. And and solid. So, I mean, I think we have some good guidance here as to what it takes to be a vendor in the market today on some level, and especially as it comes to AI and how we can help serve associations in the space. But if there was somebody that were saying, I want to come into this space, I haven't ever served this space before, outside of these things that we're talking about, is there, is that a good play right now? Do you feel like the association market is somebody that's ready for something new and fresh? Maybe it's a ground up AI based AMS. I mean, do you think that's a slam dunk, or do you think the market's hesitant out there for things that are different?
Well, you know this as well as anybody, is that this market, if you will, is kind of this is not a derogatory thing. It's just a little bit of a laggard on being a bleeding, on the edge type situation. So I think that, building something from scratch will come, and it may be coming sooner or later, but I'm not so sure that the market actually is, so thirsty for it and does, wants that. There's still some stability, if you will, that they can find in some of the existing, systems
Mhm.
that are just kind of building within and out, if you will, as opposed to from the ground up. So I would say if I'm investing in something, it might be not a bad thing if you're willing to work through you're gonna need some time is my response to that, Chris. I think that if I'm being asked, yeah, it's gonna come, you're gonna need some time to kind of educate the market, and you need to be realistic about that time. So you need to have partners that aren't willing to pull the cord before the runway is over.
Yeah.
I would say that in the next, 5 years, I'm gonna
Yes.
go on the record right now. I want you and I to revisit this. In 5 years, there'll be somebody out there
Yeah.
that's built it from the ground up. Okay. And so what I think that that's going to look like, are we talking about the future? You want to talk about the future now?
Yeah, I do. I do want to talk about that.
Okay. Oh,
Let's talk about your QR code too.
what's that?
I said I want to be explicit about your QR code too. What that's about.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that the future is this. And I would say that when I think about it, when I think about the tech stack, if we think about the tech stack alone, right? Okay. I think that, well, even before that, I think I'm going to have to start looking at, in essence, the indicators, if you will, that I am hopeful that to see in the next 3 to 5 years.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that AMS vendors would probably they'll probably see, and I'll be watching for, you know, several things or more, probably 4 or 5 different things, but basically acquisitions. Okay. I think a lot of these proprietary vendors that we talked about, and by no means, if anybody's, and hopefully there are a lot of people listening, is that I don't mean that in a derogatory manner. Proprietaries are good. Okay. Proprietary systems are good. But I think that a lot of the proprietary systems are just going to be faced with reality that they don't have the bandwidth and they can't get up to speed quick enough to compete with, bigger players and platform players. That's just a reality. And so what I'm going to be looking for is maybe some of these niche players out there being gobbled up by some of the other ones. Niche players like focusing on a specific use case, for example, that they're solving that's unique in the marketplace. I don't know, and I'm not going to say that's going to transpire, please, by any means, but somebody that might focus in on integration with accounting, systems or some of that nature, or they, you know, some little niche that they deal with, and maybe they work with alumni groups, or they work, those players are probably going to get gobbled up, is what I'm thinking. Okay. I think that's going to be a signal. I also I'll be looking for an indicator of like, what are these people really truly putting out there as they're opening, like their statements, if you will, about AI. We talked about it earlier about the whole idea of um,
Hmm.
the aspect of uh, the openness and whatnot, but basically putting their AI, policy, if you will, out there and seeing what they're doing. Right. And then I want to see if the platform players, how much they really start to take hold of the mind share people, because this is all this is going to be indicative of kind of what, you know, is going to be necessary moving forward for sure. But then the other side of it is I want to see is that, like, even though some systems may have some things right now we mentioned about that are doing through partnerships and one ready membership that has something, will we begin to see some parity? Meaning, will there be table stakes that are just there that everybody's just going to accept in the next
Mhm.
3 to 5 years? For example, everybody now on the CRM side is knowing that they're going to go in, they're going to have an AI enhancer for writing an email, right? Isn't that
Yes.
pretty much
Yes.
table stakes? I mean, now
It
if
is.
you're relevant, if you're in, AMS, that better be there, you know? So those features that, that are there. The next thing I think you're going to see, Chris, is on the analytics side. It's not enough just to actually look at back history. I want AI to reason with me about the data. It tell me why the trends are happening, you know, and give me, not only that, but also produce a report for my board that shares that reasoning, you know,
Yes.
uh, things that I would have to spend hours doing that can be done. Right. And then you'll see, like, okay, other tasks that we've been through this whole idea, and you're familiar with this because on the marketing side of things, where you have, certain workflow that you build out in the system where you say X, if this happens and this happens and this happens, right? You're gonna see systems that are not only where you can orchestrate those things, but you're actually gonna see where at one decision point or one task, then the systems will be able to reason and relate back and then actually get smarter about it and then restart the journey back. Will that be and I think that will be kind of all these things I'm talking about is like, will there be like basically things that become just they have to do it? Okay. And if
Yeah.
that's going on, then you might see this whole thing where these vendors like say, that's enough. Then you got somebody that comes in and says, I'm building from the ground up because I want to take data and I want to, I don't want to have to build out an MCP. I want MC to be a part of my framework or my, you know,
Mm.
um, you know, when they start up the system, they can start connecting out, right? So I just think that AI, feature parity, et cetera. But when we go back to what I talked about with the predictions or the thought of the kind of what's going to look like in the tech stack, I believe in my mind right now at this point, I still believe that the small micro associations that are out there will probably be okay with this idea of being an all in one. I think they'll be okay with that, still that methodology to a degree. I think as you grow and with more services, more programs, and more revenue centers, if you will, that people are going to start looking at the tech stack a little bit different way, whereby which there's this whole idea that the AMS is an element of the tech stack, but the data is the foundation.
Mhm.
So you would probably see more of these mid-market players having some other, like a Databricks or, Snowflake or something that's managing the data for all these different systems that are have schemas that come into the
Mhm.
Databricks and the other systems that are out there. And then you'll have a member interface, and that could be anything, honestly. It could be a AI powered app that basically has an interface into that data stack, that foundation of data. The data will be the gold again of the organization, should be the gold of the organization. Or as my
Right.
son used to tell me, gold's not that great, it's platinum, dad. So it's the platinum of the organization. So the member interface will be there. It might be something that we don't even know about right now. The
Right. Yeah.
AMS will be kind of like a little platform play in there. And then there'll be an AI layer that will kind of be agents that are acted upon to do things like, predictive analytics or, sentiment analysis or, you know, pulling out information about, from the abstract management system, the event system to understand, why people are going and then give them more messaging and the system doing it. And then it gets smarter,
Mhm.
And
Yes.
then I think that the other thing that's going to be kind of critical, I think moving forward, that's going to change as it relates to consulting firms and the idea, the expectations as a buyer, if you will, is going to be implementation is going to be much easier to do. I think that you're going to have more of these, what would have taken, a long, long time to implement something, 18 months for some, what I refer to as tier one systems, it could be diminished by AI. Think about it. Data management, data in itself is, AI can handle very well. So when you come in, and honestly, with an implementation, I've done hundreds of them, is data is the biggest thing you have to deal with initially, right? And so you have to map it out. AI can do that. AI can do it really, really quick. It will only get better and faster. So that's going to minimize 40, 60 hours or more for projects. So what once was a big piece of, the pie for hours of time
Hmm.
is going to be translated into associations not have to consider that as the biggest area of meaning. They're going to, a lot of people don't move because of that, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
as a vendor, if I'm thinking about what AI could do, that would be honestly a revolutionary for a lot of vendors to come to the table and say, guess what? Our legacy, tier one, top of the line MS system or CRM or whatever, we now have this AI driven mapping tool that not only takes the data and maps it, but also creates the fields that you need in our database. It actually takes those and not only just creates the field, but then it puts underneath it the intelligence to actually know what type of field it is. You don't have to have anybody deal with that. So what's that going to do to, the market? Well, it's going to do a lot of things. One of which is there's a lot of people going to probably more easily move. And so
Yeah.
there's going to be more and more people that are going to be leaving quicker than ever before. So that's just one area I think is going to be really big is data migration. But there's also these other things like training. Think about training right now with AI. I mean, you can build out, training programs really, really quick, easy, if you have the content as a vendor to actually create a whole slew of earning educational training sessions that would have taken you months, years. And then think about this. One of the things I always say is that you got to check for documentation, but it's not just documentation. It's like some of these systems like have been around for 30 years. It's old, it's outdated, it's no longer relevant. So it has to
Right.
constantly be, updated, right? AI can do that just like that now. It can
Yeah.
create programs for learning and training on these systems. So I think the whole process of implementation is going to be huge. And I think that the vendor landscape, 5 years from now, it is really going to have to be thinking about things, to leverage AI that's going to make them different. Because at some point, as I look at over the next, as I mentioned, 3 years, I just want to see what's happening that are the table stakes of what we expect in AI. And then from there, it's going to be like, okay, well, that's just not good enough, and is it some people doing this or that? And somebody's going to say at some point, well, hell, I'm going to build it from the ground up and I'm going to build it with AI from
Right.
the ground up. And it's not only going to solve the problems that associations deal with, but we're also, you meaning like the functional things the staff needs to do, members do, but also from an implementation perspective, that'll also be changed by AI as well. And people who aren't thinking that way are going to be left behind.
Well said. Well said. Cool. Covered a lot of great ground, so appreciate that. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure we talked about today, or any topics you wanted to explore?
Uh, I don't know what else. Did we go through all the questions? Oh, one thing I do want to talk about,
Yeah, cool.
uh, and this goes to and I always do this because we do it as an organization, as a community, the AMS, et cetera. But
Yeah.
one of the things as I was exploring in my report, the idea of what can be done, what people are saying they can do, and what's really happening in the real world with AI, is I began to kind of notice that I mentioned CRM, but I actually noticed in the nonprofit, the general nonprofit space, that a lot of donor management systems are are coming into the mix where they can do a lot of AI above and beyond what AMS systems are doing in the
Mm.
marketplace. And I think I bring this up is because if we're looking at, what's going to transpire in the future or what these folks need to be mindful of is that it's already happened in the donor side. Avid AI is a product that's out that basically just was released that basically is built with all the workflow and agents for allowing people to do fundraising and donor processes, if you will, through
Mm.
agents and AI. And again, I don't really belittle anybody for the whole idea of the marketing component and building papers and articles and stuff, but that's really not the power of AI. It's AI is the power as an agent of getting things to be actually done on your behalf that you would physically have to do the action part. And that's what this Avid AI is doing. Also, Virtuous is another one that I looked at. And then I started thinking, well, are any of these ancillary systems that we deal with, like LMSs and communities,
Mhm.
are they doing, what are they doing? And LMSs, I already mentioned that just a minute ago, but basically they're doing a fantastic job with leveraging AI in changing and solving it. I think a lot of the reality of what AMS is going to do, and it goes back to the whole idea of AMSs can't be everything, all things, everybody, and be
Yeah.
great at it. No person can do that, and no product can be expected to be the best of and everything, right? And so that's why you have a lot of these best of need programs that are out there.
Yeah.
And so if you focus in and just on LMS, or you focus in on, you know, um, financials or whatever it may be, and that's what you do it well and you excel at it. They're the ones that seem to be getting the AI quicker because they only have to deal with
Interesting.
one component. So I think that I think the surprise, if you will, the tech sector's doing the best job right now aren't really obviously the AMS players. They're focusing on, too much. And the SQL purpose platforms are the ones that nailed the problem initially pretty well. And
Yeah.
so I think that even in event management system, when I was looking at and doing the cross comparison of like going back to the reality of what expectations should be, they're doing some good stuff. They make event registrations, AI leverage that very well. They handle
Hmm.
a lot of the nuances of not just of registration process, but also on shelf processes that can be done to provide, kind of a frictionless experience, if you will, on the event side. So I think that the truth is that this idea, this all one, and that goes back where I think the future is going, is that I don't believe that AMS at the mid-market size association, that whole, it has been waning for some time.
Hmm.
But and their pitch has always been, why buy 5 tools when we can fill it all, right?
Yes.
Um,
Correct.
but the truth is you can do membership well, likely, excellently, perhaps. Events kind of okay, but can't do management of events. You can do poor management on element. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
But for some folks, the micro small associations that have maybe less complexity sometimes, then that might be the way to go. But I think the reality of things is that most people will get to the point of like, I need a system that is open, extensible. It can't be API only now. That's
Right.
passe. It's MCP, and we need to have a roadmap that's going to say, okay, we're going to take this approach, and we're going to do these things and I think that's what these point solutions have been able to address because they're focusing on one area and they are doing it really well. I'm
Hmm.
pretty pleased with what I saw on that side of the equation. Whereas, like I said, on most of these
Yeah.
AMS systems, it's been not as I hope for, with exception to few. And I don't want to poo-poo everybody,
Sure. Of course.
but basically, I really applaud. You know, I would even on my rating score, something like Ready Membership. Um, and
Hmm.
that's the last thing. And maybe we talk way too much, but
No, it's great.
I think that this is important to note is that I used to, I still do. I have a tier classification tool on my website actually that's available to figure out, in order for people not to have to Google their way to nowhere, you need to get yourself in the mindset. You got to take those 130 systems down to a manageable list, right? And you kind of have to, my mind years ago, dozen years ago or more was, well, how do I get down to something I can keep my head around and categorize? And so I put in some rule of thumbs and classified, systems based on what I refer to as tier levels. And so one thing that I pull away from this AI report that I did is that the truth is that those tier classifications don't really don't really add a lot of value to what people can do in one particular area, specifically now with
Sure.
AI. What I mean by that is that you could be a tier classified 3 system and cater to that market, but you actually have a higher level AI score than, say, somebody that's at the enterprise level. Does that make sense? So, for
Absolutely.
example, Ready membership is not necessarily, I wouldn't say a bona fide, tier 1, but they're disrupting. They have a really cool, way to address this market right now, and I think they're doing really good. I was kind of impressed with them. Glue Up, another one, doing some interesting things with their AI copilot, and
Hmm.
we talked about, IMS is another one, but the overall market, I think. Oh, and the last one I think is really seems to be. I thought they would be a little bit better than they are, and they probably will be. But Canola is another one that's come out that basically is leveraging a platform that has some, built-in framework of HubSpot
HubSpot,
infrastructure
right?
that they're able to leverage on the platform side. But the proprietary systems, the classification, if you will, what I found was I was wanting to see if there was a correlation between that and AI proficiency and capabilities, and that's just not true.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, love it, love it. Well, I mean, we covered some good ground, man. Excellent stuff. Super helpful, insightful.
I hope I didn't talk too much.
That's what you were here for.
Oh, is that right? Well, I would
Essentially, it
say
is.
this, and if I'm in your shoes and I'm consulting with like an AMS vendor or something like that, I'd just sit there and say, listen, you got to choose your battle. You know,
Mm,
I think a lot of these guys and gals is leading these vendors, now these behemoth, and these Swiss Army knife all in one. They're thinking too much about everything, and they need to get fixated and focused in on choosing the battle of doing one thing well. And the reality is that if you're in this market today, you really shouldn't be thinking, well, I'm going to build a better AMS. That's a strategic mistake. I think that there's too many players out there and you need to focus in on what you want to do. So pick one problem and then maybe an AMS, you can identify across the markets that they do
mhm.
poorly and you nail that, I was thinking the other day about this product the other day. I was like, hey, you're pretty much the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
Um, I've said this before, but if you're not, even if you're not an AMS either, don't purport to be one. you know. But if there's like an area that people aren't doing and you want to excel, you might be able
Right.
to kick off like a specialized community management module that's AI powered with mentor matching or something, for
There
example,
you go. Right.
or volunteer recruitment automation where you can do predictive engagement scoring of when people are going to care about being involved based on some,
Sure.
data source that you have that's not maybe even an AMS, but you can get
Or
to.
LinkedIn or okay.
Yeah, or AI, I think AI powered content curation or creating is going to be one of those table stakes. But I think that you need to focus in on this and you got to look at what you're going to do, focus in on that and then get going. I think that I would focus in on small associations too. I really
Mhm.
would. If I'm in the
Yeah.
seat of some executive and whatnot, I wouldn't. Everyone thinks the large associations have bigger budgets, so I'll go after the enterprise, blah, blah, blah. But I
Yeah.
think that, you know, if you get into this AI initiatives, those small to mid-size, they can make decisions quicker. Uh,
Yeah.
they tend to move a little bit quicker in the process. You can work with them a little bit more nimble with being able to test and, be a little bit
Yeah.
more lenient with, maybe product roadmaps that being fed to them by the other side of the equation. And I just think that it's okay to be built with and not built from scratch.
It's good stuff, man.
Well, I hope this works out. I hope that again, thank you so much for including me. You can tell that I probably have a little bit too much nails and think too much about this stuff.
That's good. Somebody has to. That's why you're here, man. You've been thinking about all of it. So the AI, talk about the AI report at the QR code.
Oh, yes, as you see, I can't tell which side you're going to be looking at, but on either side of me is actually a QR code for requesting this AI readiness report. And as I mentioned a little bit early on in the conversation, what I've done is I've taken a real good, thorough, deep look at all the different systems out there, and I've gone through. I've looked at a lot of documentation that's on their websites. I've talked to a lot of vendors about what it is that they do. And as I was doing it initially, I basically set aside, and documented all the findings I had. And I would just structurally would just like one by one. And this is not an exaggeration, literally gave everybody advantage in the sense of everybody's included in it. So
Okay.
I looked at all 130 systems that are out there
Yeah.
that I keep track of. And then the purpose of it was to provide a comprehensive analysis report of the AI capabilities across those AMS systems and to provide association leaders with kind of realistic expectations and ways by which to think about making decisions about what it is the AI can and can't be done within that AMS system. And hopefully what it does, Chris, is it cuts through that, kind of the vendor marketing rhetoric, if you will, to really identify kind of AI capable systems that do this, that, or the other, or don't. And also their product roadmaps. What are they doing? We talked about this in the conversation is like, are they taking their own build approach or are they
Mhm.
taking a
Yeah.
partner approach to getting to where they need to go?
Yeah.
And then at the end, I basically took and put together a formula for actually grading or the quality, if you will. Just like I do with AMS systems, I'll tick off if they do something, but that's just not good enough. You also have to look at the quality. So there's depth of each functional area and feature of
Yeah.
capabilities. It's just not enough to say, well, I integrate with QuickBooks. Well, what does that look like? Do you do it summary level export? Is it real time? All these things are quality components.
Mhm.
So I just basically put together this report, quantified, where they fit, which ones are doing well, and basically prepared probably a little bit too much the first time with all the notes, and then I kind of compressed it into what I think most people can bite into and read,
Oh,
which
that's
is the
awesome.
AI executive report, and it gives kind of a analysis too about what my thoughts are on the trajectory of the market, what
Mm.
AI likely will be looking at to do, and the proven ROI expectations that you can get. So it's a pretty in depth. I think it's over. The executive summary is about 17 pages, and it gives a pretty good idea of how I would score. It gives you insights into at least at the level of the name of the companies and their score. And then if their platform or proprietary, are they leaders? Are they performers? Are they, capable? Do they have any, credibility, streetwise cred, if you will, and actually
Sure.
deliver on this stuff? So it's, I'm proud of it. But I did it honestly in a self-serving way, but I wanted to share it with the community because I wanted to make sure that everybody had the access to
Oh, that's a
understand
great
what's going
piece.
on.
Everybody should check it out. Really, just somebody doing old school research on new school technology. I love it.
Yes, and then obviously, as we talked about more of law, this is always constantly evolving. I just read something about a product today that could do some things I didn't realize because they just released it. So, just like
Mhm.
everybody else, when you're
Yeah.
going to look, this is just a ongoing. It is a online report which will continually be updated by myself when I
Awesome.
read through, or I'm
Yeah.
advised by vendors that things have changed in the product roadmap. So it's hopefully an evergreen report, if you
Hmm.
will, that continually will be valuable.
Chad, thanks for your time, man, and your insights and your hard work out there in this community and all you do for it. And appreciate you talking through the world of tech and
My
AI
pleasure.
right now, man.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.